Hey friends, Jimmy here, and welcome to Pixar Theology, where we learn how to see God's truth in some of our favorite movies. Today, we're going to talk about how God is a loving father who never stops looking for a lost child. And of course, that means we're talking about Finding Nemo. Okay, so we have this idea in our heads that when we feel far from God or disconnected from Him, that He's the one who's lost. Now, perhaps we wouldn't say it that bluntly because we know intellectually that if God exists, there's no way He could be lost. But we feel like He is, and so we feel like we need to start searching for God or go on a spiritual exploration or find our faith. But what if it's the other way around? What if in those moments we realize that we don't have to go looking for God because He had already done all the work of finding us? What if all we had to do was receive the unconditional love and grace of our Father in heaven? What we see in Finding Nemo is the relentless pursuit of a loving father to find his lost son. Marlin, despite being overprotective to a fault, loves Nemo more than anything. In the opening scene, Marlin embraces the only remaining egg after the barracuda comes and kills his wife and all the other eggs. Is this really a kid's movie? It's pretty dark, Pixar. Anyway, he's holding the egg and he names the soon-to-hatch fish Nemo, saying that he will never let anything happen to him. And it's sentimental, but it's a totally bogus promise. It's a promise that God, the most loving father imaginable, doesn't even make to us. Needless to say, something happens to Nemo. He gets lost from his father, and Marlin goes out to find him. And like Nemo, we wander and get lost. Our hearts just sometimes, or even often, lead us away from God. We get caught up in our own pursuits, school, work, sports, performance, family, relationship, friends, volunteering. And notice that all these things are good things, but when we elevate them to be the ultimate thing or things in our lives, we tend to wander off course from God instead of prioritizing Him through those things. And maybe that's a new idea for you to ponder, that good things in your life can actually sometimes make you feel lost. And then there's the things we do that we know are wrong, and we create this imaginary distance from God. Like we try to hide from Him because we feel shame without realizing that God doesn't hate us. He's not ashamed of us in those moments that we mess up. He actually wants to love and care for us in those moments. Because here's the thing, God doesn't wait for you to get it all together, to clean up your life before He comes to find you and be with you. He actually pursues you. It's like that song you might have heard. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. All right, I won't sing the whole thing. But maybe your pushback to that is, wait, God's coming after me? That's kind of creepy. But if that's what you're thinking, think back to Finding Nemo. Marlin is a dad who loves his lost child. And I don't think for a moment that anyone would think his coming after Nemo was creepy. And like that, God comes after his lost children. This is the story of the gospel. God gets His hands dirty. He is a loving father who enters the story as Jesus and brings beauty, restoration, and healing to lost people in a broken world. If you look in the Bible, the authors capture this in different ways. The Gospel according to John opens with a beautiful passage about how Jesus was God in the flesh and made His dwelling among us. And later in the Bible, we see a letter written by Paul to the Philippians that talks about how Jesus gave up equality with God to make Himself nothing, a servant. This is the length to which God pursues us. Marlin's devotion to the pursuit of his lost son, Nemo, is a reminder to us of the lengths God goes to find us and bring us home into a relationship with himself. There's another scene in the movie that shows the transformation that takes place after Nemo is found. There's a huge fishing net that scoops up a ton of fish, but also Marlin's new friend, Dory. Marlin tries to stop Nemo from entering the fishing net because of his tendency to be so overprotective, but he realizes that he can't do that anymore, and he lets Nemo go in. And Nemo ends up saving Dory and all the other fish. And then it's like a weight is lifted off Marlin, and he reunites with his son, who he loves, and they can just be together the way it was always meant to be, sharing life together as father and child. This is a picture of the way God changes us after we realize we are found in him. In partnership with him, we are able to face our fears because we have the God of the universe with us. He doesn't guarantee safety, and he certainly doesn't guarantee success. But what God does promise is that he will never leave us, never stop loving us, and never stop pursuing us. Like Nemo, we can swim into the net with confidence that our dad is rooting for us. And even if we fail, he'll be there with compassion and grace and love. So what's your next adventure? What are you going to pursue next? What net do you need to swim into? Whatever it is, do it with the trust that God, your Father, is with you, that he's on your side and he wants to teach you and coach you and help you become the kind of person he wants you to be. And sometimes that means failing. But when you get lost and turned around and can't find your way, my hope is that you realize that you don't have to get it all together and clean up your life before God finds you and embraces you. He has already absorbed all the brokenness in this world, and he wants to meet you right where you are and give you all the love a perfect father has to give. And that's a lot of love.